Hey y'all, it's Brian again. I'm back to talk some more about Russian literature. Surprise, surprise. We're going to talk again about our main man, Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky. Uh, I do have some other reading tastes and some other things I want to read, and that's the first thing I'll talk about. I'm very happy and excited because my copy of the selected short stories of Anton Chekhov has arrived. I'm very excited to break this open and get into it because I never have read anything by Chekhov, and he's just got such a great reputation that I'm excited to see, excited to experience. And if you like books, is there anything more exciting than getting a new book? Uh, I probably like that feeling too much because I have a ton of books on my shelf that I haven't read, but it's just the joy of buying them that attracts me. So there's Anton Chekhov. So I promised that the next video will not be a Dostoevsky related video. It'll be a different subject. I'll start exploring Anton Chekhov. So I hope you're excited for that. I am too. Um, but there's something very important we have to do before we start talking about Dostoevsky. That is, I got a new subscriber, so we're up to 3 now. We're slowly building a little community. So here is my new subscriber happy dance. Thank you, third subscriber. Again, I couldn't see the person's name because maybe I just don't know how to use YouTube correctly. But thank you so much for subscribing. And I also got my first comment. So thank you to my first commenter. That means so much to me. They said they enjoyed my video on the gambler. Um, yeah, so that's really my goal in one of my goals in starting this channel was to build a community of people that like to talk about books and especially Russian literature. I surprisingly I don't have a lot of people in my immediate circle that are excited about 19th century Russian literature, at least not as much as me. So I'm looking for people that want to connect, and I just want to build friendships, and sometimes I feel lonely and get lonely. So if there's anybody out there that feels the same way, this is a place where I was I'm hoping to build a place where we can come together and build friendships, even if over YouTube. And what better thing to talk about than 19th century Russian literature and Fyodor Dostoevsky. But this video is a little different because if you watch my other videos, you know that I could gush over Dostoevsky and talk about him all day, but I wanted to do a different video kind of about the things I don't like about Dostoevsky, or more kind of the things you have to be prepared for, or I wish that I was prepared for before I started reading him, and understood more. So that's what I want to do. If I'm kind of following some recommendations by a Russian lit girl. Her YouTube channel is in the description, a link to her YouTube channel. She's awesome. So definitely check out her videos and subscribe. She talked about one story called A Gentle Creature. So while I was waiting for Anton Chekhov to arrive, I thought I'd read A Gentle Creature, and we could talk about that. So A Gentle Creature is kind of a good story to bring in some of the things that I wish I was prepared for about Dostoevsky before reading Dostoevsky, because it has a lot of the things in it that I kind of don't like, or um, wish I had been in the right mindset to be prepared for before I started reading Dostoevsky. And that should let you know that I have no background in Russian literature or literature in general. I'm just a guy that likes to read and give his opinions over YouTube, but um, no one may want to hear. But the beautiful thing about the internet is that we all have a place where we can express ourselves and have a voice now. Uh, so just to give a little background and context to the story, A Gentle Creature, Dostoevsky wrote it in 1876. So it's sort of towards the end of his literary career. He's going to die in less than 5 years. So it's kind of a sobering thought, because you never know when your time is. But he and I think it's important for context. So he wrote it in 1876. It was like the only major work that he worked on during that time. But and I kind of thought, oh, what a slacker! He only wrote one thing in a whole year. But he never really stopped writing. He was always writing articles and essays and different things. And that's one thing I admire about him, is that he was a very hard worker. Part of the reason that he he wrote so much is because of what we talked about before. He had a lot of debts. A part of it was his gambling addiction, but also one thing I realized about 19th century Russia is a lot of times if you're wealthy. Oh, excuse the sirens. I live in Philadelphia. It's a normal background noise for us. But yeah, in 19th century Russia, it seems to me that if you're wealthy, you were expected to provide for your relatives and extended family. They didn't really have much of a safety net, any sort of government programs people could go to. So he always had that on the back of his mind, that he needed to provide for his family, not just his immediate family, but also relatives and things like that. So it put a lot of stress on his financial situation, and he was always writing. The It's a relatively short story, A Gentle Creature. So he wrote it probably in the month or so. At least that's what ChatGPT tells me. Um, so getting into the things that I kind of don't like about Dostoevsky, this is a really dark story. The A Gentle Creature. To talk about the plot, it's kind of, that's not to say it's not good. It's a good story, but it's about a man who's a pawnbroker, and he marries a young girl. I think she's 16 or a teenager, and he's older, much older, and he kind of tricks her into marrying him, and then later on, I think maybe only a few months or a year later, she dies. So as the story starts, it's kind of him going through his relationship with this woman, his wife, and how he treated her, and lamenting his behaviors, and talking about the reasons why she died, and kind of analyzing their relationship and how he acted. Uh, it's a very poignant story. I mean, it moved me and uh, gave me a lot to think about. It's a short story, so I can't say too much without spoiling things, and I don't want to. But it just left a weight on me, kind of the idea that expressing love for people and appreciation for people while you have the time, I guess, is as much as I'll say about what happens in the story. But yeah, he's kind of lamenting their relationship and his actions and analyzing his actions and so yeah, it's 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 a good story, and like I said, it left a mark on me. So I definitely recommend reading it. But that's the first thing that I would say about things that I wish I knew about Dostoevsky or prepared for before I started reading is he deals with a lot of dark themes like trigger warnings. we he would you would have to put, I think, every single trigger warning out there on Dostoevsky. He talks about everything at one time or another, it seems, in his works. All kinds of darkness, evil, the worst things human beings can do to each other. And I'll read some examples of just from the story, kind of what I'm talking about. So that's one thing. And I'll just read you this passage from the very end of from the very end of A Gentle Creature. Just one example of the darkness that Dostoevsky touches on. He says, "The sun will rise, and look at it. Isn't it dead? Everything is dead. Dead men are everywhere. There are only people in the world, and all around them is silence. That's what the earth is." So you read that, you're like, oh, okay, everything is dead. Thank you. Um, so, yeah, darkness, lots of darkness. And the next thing is there really are very few likable male characters in Dostoevsky's stories. Uh, it's kind of frustrating when you read them because I'm like, come on, man, we're not all jerks. But it seems like almost every male character in Dostoevsky's stories is a despicable human being. So there are very few that I was like, oh, he's a good guy. One exception is the prince in The Idiot. The Idiot is one of my favorite stories. Probably one of my favorite books, maybe number one or number two of my favorite books of all time. But yeah, the Prince. I like the Prince. He's good. He's a good guy. But even he's got some real flaws. But yeah, and so Dostoevsky has this conception of the underground man. That's sort of his. The Notes from Underground is, I would say, kind of his breakthrough novel. Um, I mean, he was very famous early on, and with his initial novel called Poor Folk, and then he wrote some other stories, and then he ended up tied in with a radical political group, and he actually was went to prison and was going to be executed. He was pardoned at the very last minute by the Tsar, and then exiled to I think Siberia or remote areas in Russia to serve in the army. And so obviously he wasn't writing much at that time. He was basically in prison, but or at least this remote area of the army, remote area of Russia, and wasn't very productive. But when he came out of that sort of non-productive era, he wrote The Underground Man, and that sort of kicked off his more famous novels. But in the Underground Man, you get this picture of he's just a really a really despicable person. I can't think of any other way to describe him. He's probably the character I hate the character I most dislike in literature. Even the villains, like the different villains that you read about, sometimes you can kind of at least enjoy reading about them. But this guy, the Underground Man, just like ugh, he's everything he does. But so you see the theme of the Underground Man, kind at least I do. And again, I don't know anything about Russian literature. I just read it. But so it kind of runs through his different stories. This reoccurring themes and characteristics of the Underground Man. So you see a lot of those characteristics in the pawnbroker, and some of the characteristics that I see for the Underground Man are one that they're kind of very petty, like they focus in on insults and they just won't forgive. Like they won't let it go. Like the Underground Man will he I think he's kind of encounters this man on the streets, and he does something, like maybe bumps into him, I forget, but it's some very very slight insult, and the Underground Man will he stews on the insult for like 2 years, and then he's coming up and devising all these different ways to get back at the guy that insulted him in some slight way, and the guy probably doesn't even doesn't even realize that he insulted this Underground Man, but he's holding on to that. And the pawnbroker, he does the same thing. Like he has this incident that happens when he's in the army, and he ends up getting kicked out of his regiment, and he analyzes what happened and the reasons why he got kicked out of his regiment, and he just kind of stews on it and resents everyone, resents the world, and he's very spiteful because he believes that he's been insulted. It's this idea of victimhood, like everyone is hurting me, everyone is out to get me, and I'm the victim. Like this, uh, a very significant characteristic of the Underground Man mentality, uh, and and just to take a little aside from my own life, I see myself doing this sometimes, and it because I've read Dostoevsky and thought about these things, I catch myself. So in that way, it's helpful, I guess. But like for instance, when I was in school, I was in grad school. There was this woman, very attractive, very smart woman. Uh, she had a lot of opportunities, and she was. I studied government, so she had a pretty significant role in, I think, in the state government in Connecticut. And so, truth be told, I kind of resented her because she was she was attractive and popular, and she was on the career path that I wanted to be on, but I wasn't on, and so I already was building this narrative in my head that she is not a good person, or she has something that I should have but I don't. It's this idea of like resentment. I'm angry at you because you have something that I believe I should have but I don't. So I'm gonna be angry at you, and so I built up in my mind that person didn't like me because when she would come in and when we would do like group projects together because we were in the same class, and and I got the feeling that she was purposely not talking to me, and so I was like, oh, she must be stuck up, or maybe she's a rich girl and she has all these opportunities because she's rich, and maybe she didn't earn them. You see this story that's going on in my head, mind you, not based in reality. It's something that I made up. You see the Underground Man doing that, like different slights that happened. uh, he's coming up with these stories like it must be that the community hates me. They don't like me because I'm a pawnbroker, or he'll be having a conversation with his wife. Not even a conversation. He'll just be and sitting in the same room together, and maybe she's reading a book, and he'll look at her and say, "Why does she look at me like that? She doesn't respect me." Just because he 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 saw some kind of a look, or thought he did, and maybe she didn't even. That's another thing. It's unreliable. He's an unreliable narrator, so you never know what to believe, and that happens a lot in Dostoevsky's book. So you're like, she gives him this look, and you're like, did she really mean to insult him, or is he making it up in his mind? So, but for me, I I what happened was, thank God that we I gave a speech in that class, and the very woman that I was building up all these stories about came to me, and she told me that she said, "Oh, Brian, I really enjoyed your speech. I thought it was great, and we got to talking, and then I discovered that she is the nicest person you'd ever want to meet. But I would have never known that because I was building up this story in the back of my head to try and make sense of the world, of my experiences. Like, so that's definitely an underground man characteristic. And when I think back on it, I'm like, whoa, good good thing I actually talked to her and found out what was really going on in reality. What else? The underground man is very paranoid. Like I said, they're always saying, "Oh, this person is out to get me," and they're very self-critical. Like, um, "Oh, why did I do that? I should have done this." Over analyzing everything, and you see the pawnbroker. He's constantly analyzing little interactions with his wife, and again, back to the insult that he experienced in the army, or the incident he experienced in the army. uh, how could it played out? It could have played out differently if I just did this, if I just did that. And that is another characteristic I see in myself, like, um, over analyzing things that I do, and I could have done something better. Even when I make these videos, I'm like, why did I say it like that? After I stop the recording, I'm like, oh, I could have said it so much better. But it just being really hard on yourself. It's another characteristic. And they're they're usually very lonely people, the underground man, because they don't make connections because they're paranoid, because they they're thinking everyone's trying to hurt them or take advantage of them, and they're proud. So that everything is everyone else's fault. It's never my fault. It's never something that I need to take responsibility for. It's obviously another person's fault that I'm in the situation that I'm in. So those are a few of the characteristics that I see in the underground man, but also in different male characters throughout Dostoevsky's work, and then uh, in the pawnbroker. And I'll just read you a couple different passages so you can have some flavor, a little bit on his relationship with his wife. This is what he says about her in one passage. He says, "Proud is she? Well, I thought I like them proud. Proud women are particularly good when you're no longer in doubt about your power over them." See, he views everything as a contest. Like, I have to subdue this person because he's the underground man is very insecure. So they're constantly trying to control other people. And then he says, another passage. He says, "I wanted her to stand in homage before me because of my suffering, and I deserved it." So, because I've been insulted, because I've suffered, because I've experienced pain in my life, this person has to give me homage. or, uh, it's that idea that, again, that I'm a victim, and everything is everybody else's fault. And then this is a good one for the idea of spite. He says, "You rejected me." He's talking about the community that he lives around, because he believes that they don't like him because he's a pawnbroker. So the pawnbroker is maybe not a profession that people respect or respected at that time. He says, "You have rejected me, you, the people. I mean, have cast me out with contemptuous silence. For my passionate desire to love you, you have repaid me with a wrong, from the consequence of which I shall suffer all my life." So, what he says is with contemptuous silence. So, it's not that people are necessarily saying anything that he can in reality determine is negative. He has this idea because like people are silent around him that they don't like him. And and he says, "Oh, I was only trying to love you, and this is how you repaid me with a wrong, from the consequences of which I shall suffer all my life." Very dramatic. And then this last passage I'll read, again with spite. He says, "And so, if it had to be shame, let it be shame. If it had to be disgrace, then let it be disgrace. If it had to be degradation, then let it be degradation. And the worse, the better." So that's a little bit about his mentality. But the pawnbroker is different than the underground man in Notes from Underground, because he kind of tries to mend his ways, which at least there's a little bit of hope in that. There's not much hope in this story, but at least he tries to mend his ways. Uh, but I find it interesting, this the idea of spite. So I think it is an emotion that only humans have. Like the idea that you hurt me, so I'm gonna hurt you back, no matter the consequences. He said, the worse the better. And so, like, if you're spiteful, you will hurt someone else for just for the just because you have the ability to hurt them, even if you know that their response to you hurting them is going to be 10 times worse for you. So in the end, you'll end up worse, but you still take the opportunity to lash out, to hurt someone, even if it's going to make you suffer more. That is a uniquely human emotion, I think, because when you look at animals, like they're vicious, but they fight people, they fight other animals for food or because their family is threatened. There are reasons for why they're doing what they're doing, and I've even heard stories of tigers, for instance, that will seek people out just for the just for revenge because they've stolen some food or hurt their mate. They'll stalk them down and take revenge on them. And I've heard stories about bears uh, killing people, killing animals and attacking people just just for no discernible reason. But that's different than spite. Because an animal, I don't think, even if they want to, will attack. An animal's not going to attack a bigger animal that has the ability to hurt them worse. Like if a if an animal is going to end up worse by attacking another animal, I could be wrong, but I think that they will say, nope, I won't do that. But human beings, we will. That's spite. And that is, uh, I think it's a big theme in Dostoevsky's stories. But that's really interesting to me, that idea. So that's the Underground Man. That's, I really, um, I learn a lot from the Underground Man and the psychology behind him, but I just wish there were there were some more redeemable male characters, and maybe I'll find some as I read more because I still haven't read some of his mainly the brothers Karamazov and a couple of other of his novels. We talked about the dark themes and the trigger warnings, definitely. And then the the last thing I guess I will say is just the suffering. Like the books, the stories, there's so much poverty, so much despair, which I guess goes along with the darkness, but it's just so much suffering of people. And a lot of times he doesn't leave you with much hope. It ends up being very bleak. And again, there are reasons for this, but it just sometimes you're like, give me something, give me some hope. uh, and I should mention also the length of the work. The the stories are tend to be long, and sometimes it takes time for anything significant to happen. uh, like for instance, I think if you read Crime and Punishment, if you read in the Penguin edition, you have to read like 60 pages before the crime happens. And then you're like, and then it's just a slow burn, slow descent for hundreds of pages, analyzing Raskolnikov's mental breakdown. So it's very internally based. It's there's not, I mean, there's not a lot of thriller type action or things going on. I, I enjoy the kind of analyzing psychology and the character because I I'm very interested in why people are doing what they're doing and what they're thinking, what's their motivation. So Dostoevsky is great for that. Like and like Raskolnikov goes on long walks where he's just tossing ideas back and forth in his mind, and so you really get to see the way the character's mind is working and his motivations. So I appreciate that, but if you're looking for action, and you won't find much. Uh, so that's another thing. Um, and then the last thing I'll say, yeah, I was just talking about the suffering, the bleakness, the poverty, despair. Um, but I do think it's interesting because I think there are reasons for it. And one reason is I think just social expose. So I don't know how much the upper class in Russia realized the extent of the suffering and degradation that the peasants were going through, even the middle class, because apparently the literacy rate in 19th century Russia was only about 21%, according to ChatGPT. So Dostoevsky is writing to a very specific group of people who are upper class and they have wealth, they have money to buy his books, and they have time to read them, like time to slog through hundreds of pages to contemplate what he's talking about. I mean, I think the average peasant back then would be like, "Hey, I have to plow my field. I can't read. I can't read this brick." So I think much like Dickens was doing, uh, you know, strolling through the streets of London, I think to show the upper class what is happening. Maybe Dostoevsky was doing the same thing. That's part of the reason for the extent of the suffering and the darkness in his books. Another thing I was thinking is that so, and these are not new ideas. Other people have brought this up, so please don't think that anything I'm saying is original. I looked for some sources on ChatGPT for the things these ideas, and other people have brought them up. This is one that the Russian lit girl had talked about. It's the idea of nihilism in Russia. So the way I understand it, nihilism is sort of there's no meaning in life, and then the way this is how the Russian lit girl put it, but in Russia, there was the idea that society needed to be torn down, so and then rebuilt, so that you could make kind of an idealistic sort of utopia. But before you could have the utopia, you had to get rid of the old order. So that's sort of a nihilistic idea, and I think Dostoevsky is kind of fighting against that idea because in Christianity, sort of this idea, I am a kind of an average Protestant, but this idea that there's an idea of total depravity, which means that, kind of means that human beings are incapable of reforming, incapable of bringing about utopia or any kind of reform in their personal life through their own works and through logic and education. Like our idea of perfection, if we try to do it on our own, is going to end up falling short somehow or going off the rails in different ways. So you need a spiritual component, and the as I understand it, the Orthodox don't believe in total depravity, the total depravity of human beings, the way that Protestants do. But I think he's trying to make the point that, hey, we can't remake society based on our logic and based on our education. We need a spiritual component. We need God. We need Christ to reform to make us new. Not even reform us. He has to make us completely new. It's impossible for us to do that in our own strength. So I think one of the reasons he's showing so much suffering is because he wants people to see, hey, human beings, we're we're depraved. Like, look what is going on. We cannot fix ourselves. So I think that's an interesting theme because this is something Darryl Cooper said. I mentioned him before in both of my other reviews. But when you think about the communists and the revolutionaries in Russia, they sort of wanted to create a new man. So the Germans in World War II, maybe they just wanted to get rid of their enemies, like however they could get rid of them. But the communists were saying, we don't want to get rid of people. We want to make them new. We want to change the way they think. We want to change the way they act. We want to make them new people. And in Dostoevsky, I think by showing how dark the world is saying it's not possible. Not possible for us to reform ourselves without without God, without some kind of spiritual component. And then the last thing is this idea of redemptive suffering. So in Christianity again, there's this idea that suffering leads to godliness. So there's one particular scripture. There's a few different scriptures I could cite, but one where Paul says, if we suffer with him, we shall also reign with him. So he's talking about Christ. If we suffer with Christ, we will reign with him. So many Christian denominations have taken that to mean that there's some kind of value in suffering, and human beings can kind of be saved through their suffering. I don't follow that interpretation, but I believe that's another idea kind of within Eastern Orthodox, this idea of redemptive suffering. And please, if you are Orthodox and I'm mischaracterizing Orthodox thought, please forgive me. Like I said, I'm Protestant. I have gone to the Orthodox Church really because of Dostoevsky. I spent some time going to liturgies and trying to understand the faith because he talks so much about it, and I really did enjoy it. It touched my heart. It changed me, particularly the liturgy, the service. It just so beautiful, so peaceful. I was kind of conflicted about leaving going back to my traditional church, and so maybe later on I'll return to the Orthodox. But so I definitely don't mean to mischaracterize or be insulting in any way. Like, I really have a heart for that faith, and like I said, it did change me experiencing the Orthodox liturgy. But I do believe that is the theme within Orthodox theology, this idea of redemptive suffering and value in suffering to save people, change society. So again, I think that's another reason why Dostoevsky focuses so much on suffering. But I think I will end the video there. It's already been long enough. Again, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that you got something from this. Please, if you have something that you want to mention, you disagree with me or agree with me, please leave it in the comments. And I really hope we can build a community and talk about great books or whatever you guys want to talk about. I'm open. Again, thanks so much. Love you all. And like I always say, this channel and the world are a better place because you are here. Bye-bye.